have been discussing about early Greek philosophers. Today we will be talking about Heraclitus, yet another interesting Milesian philosopher, and we will see why Heraclitus is so interesting. This is Dr. Ananya Barua, Associate Professor, Department of Philosophy, Hindu College. Now, Heraclitus is known popularly as Heraclitus of Ephesus. Heraclitus of Ephesus, sometime around 535 to 475 BCE, is a central figure in pre-Socratic philosophy, best known for his doctrine of becoming, the unity of opposites, and identifying fire as the arche, which is the fundamental substance of reality. Though little is known about his life with certainty, we can piece together his academic background, source philosophy, and core ideas through fragments and testimonial preserved by later thinkers like Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics. Now, the academic background and intellectual context of Heraclitus of Ephesus is it's popular, and I think it is given that the place Ephesus, an Ionian city in Asia Minor, which is the modern day Turkey, part of the broader Ionian philosophical tradition. Though Heraclitus was not formally schooled in the modern sense, he likely had access to elite education in mathematics, astronomy, and poetry, typical for aristocratic youth in Ionia. His reputation is often called as the obscure or the riddler due to the enigmatic style of his writing. Plato refers to his thought as difficult and paradoxical. Diogenes Laertius reports that he scorned previous philosophers, including Pythagoras and Hesiod. So, Heraclitus of Ephesus did have an air about himself, and he is infamous, known as the obscure. Now, the intellectual influences, implied or otherwise, has been that he was possibly influenced by the Milesians but rejected their material monism. He anticipated dialectical reasoning, and that was later developed by Hegel. The main source of philosophy of Heraclitus has been the doctrine of becoming. Heraclitus's philosophy is centered around change and flux as the fundamental nature of reality. There is a famous fragment, B12, where he has quoted, "You cannot step into the same river twice," which means change or becoming is the only constant. All things are in perpetual motion. Reality is not static, unlike Parmenides, who comes later on, claims of unchanging being. This view contrasts with earlier Milesians who sought a stable arche. For Heraclitus, stability is illusory. Everything is governed by a dynamic balance of opposites. Heraclitus comes up with fire as the arche. Why fire? Fire represents constant change. It transforms everything it touches. It is active, consuming, creating, and symbolic of transformation. Unlike water or air used by earlier thinkers, fire does not merely exist, it acts. A fragment states, quote, "The world order, cosmos, the same for all, no God nor man has made, but it always was and will be an ever-living fire, kindling in measures and being extinguished in measures," unquote. This is fragment B30. So Heraclitus, though not directly connected, Heraclitus's idea of change and becoming, which is symbolized by fire, resonates with Anaximander's concept of cosmic balance and the eternal motion of the cosmos. Heraclitus's notion of the logos may reflect an evolution of Anaximander's search for rational structure. Now, what is this meaning of fire as arche? Let us decode. Fire here is not a literal substance alone, but a metaphor for change, for energy, and for logos. The cosmos is like a living flame, shifting, shaping, balancing opposites. Fire undergoes a cosmic cycle, example turning into water and earth and back again. The logos and cosmic order. Heraclitus introduces the idea of logos, the rational principle or law that governs all change. In fragment B1, the quotation is, quote, "Although the logos is common, most people live as if they had their own understanding," unquote. Logos is the order in apparent chaos, the reason that unites opposites, the principle that makes change intelligible. We see if from the PPT here, the aspect of time and place. Heraclitus is technically stated to be around 6th to 5th BCE, Ephesus. The philosophical focus, becoming, flux, unity of opposites. Arche is definitely fire, symbol of perpetual change. Method for Heraclitus has been aphoristic, poetic, and dialectical. Key concept, logos, which is the rational cosmic law. Legacy, he influenced Stoicism, dialectics, Hegel. So this was quickly in the PPT. Heraclitus of Ephesus, thus, is one of the most enigmatic and profound thinkers of ancient Greek philosophy. His philosophy centers on change, opposites, the logos, and the unity of becoming. He wrote in aphoristic, poetic fragments, many of which survive and are widely quoted. Heraclitus believed the essence of reality is change. He rejected the notion of a stable, permanent substance, unlike Thales or Parmenides, and proposed that everything is flux. Despite this flux, he also believed that order and structure exist, governed by the logos, the rational principle underlying the cosmos. Now, some of the key themes in Heraclitus's philosophy is, number one, he says everything flows, which is the doctrine of flux, and that in itself comes up or gives us the philosophy of becoming. In fragment B12, which we had just about repeated and mentioned, the quotation was, "You cannot step into the same river twice." And it expanded in later reports as, "You cannot step into the same river twice, for other waters are continually flowing in," which means all things are in constant motion and change. Stability is an illusion. Identity is preserved only through ongoing change. The river remains a river, but its waters and forms are never the same. Going ahead, Heraclitus comes up with the underlying principle of fire as the arche. The quote in the fragment B30, repeating here again, "This world order, cosmos, the same for all, no god nor man has made. It always was, and it is, and shall be, an ever-living fire, kindling in measures and being extinguished in measures," meaning that fire symbolizes process, transformation, and life. The cosmos is not created by gods, but is eternal and self-regulating. Fire represents the dynamic, ever-changing character of reality. Again, when we talk about the logos, the rational structure of reality, and from the quote fragment B1, it is quoted, quote, "Although the logos is common, most people live as though they had a private understanding, which means that logos is the rational order or universal principle that governs everything. People fail to recognize this underlying reason or pattern. Heraclitus implies that wisdom lies in aligning with the logos. There is also the principle of unity of opposites. In fragment B10, there is a quotation, "Things taken together are whole and not whole, being brought together and brought apart, in tune and out of tune. Out of all things comes one, and out of one all things." Again, if we are to understand the unity of opposites in Heraclitus' philosophy, we need to check the fragments, the quotations that Heraclitus has cited. There's yet another quote in fragment B88 where he says, quote, "The same thing is both living and dead, awake and asleep, young and old. For these things are changed into each other and back again." Which means that opposites are not truly opposed but interdependent, each defines and sustains the other. Change involves tension and reconciliation of opposites. This anticipates dialectical thinking, which was later developed by Hegel. Further, in Heraclitus' philosophy, we see that strife and conflicts as necessary. In fragment B53, quote, "War is the father of all and king of all. Some he shows as gods, others as men. Some he makes slaves, others free." Meaning, conflict or war or polymorph is a fundamental force of creation. Through tension and opposition, the world is shaped and ordered. Without struggle, there is no movement or differentiation. Heraclitus also talks about the hidden harmony concept, which can be found in his fragment B54, where he cites, "Hidden harmony is better than visible," which means reality is often deceptive. Beneath disorder lies hidden unity. True understanding comes from seeing beyond appearances. Heraclitus also talks about the soul and inner depth. Fragment B45 quotes, "You would not find the limits of the soul, even if you travel every road. So deep is its logos," which means the soul, like the cosmos, is profound and immeasurable. It reflects the depth and complexity of the logos. So, what then is the philosophical significance here? We have just about discussed the philosophical insights of Heraclitus has been on various features, starting with the doctrine of the becoming, fire as the arche, the logos, the unity of opposites, the strife and conflict as necessary, the hidden enemy, the hidden harmony, and the soul and inner depth. Now we will be checking out on the philosophical significance of Heraclitus. Becoming versus being. Heraclitus represents the philosophy of becoming in contrast to Parmenides, who argued for unchanging being. This tension became central to the development of metaphysics. Dialectics and unity is yet another philosophical significance. Heraclitus' belief in the unity of opposites has had deeply influenced the Stoics, who embraced cosmic fire and logos, Hegel, who used dialectical movement in his idealistic philosophy. Now, metaphorical language is again a recurring theme in Heraclitus' philosophy. Heraclitus' symbolism, fire, river, war, conveys deep metaphysical insights in poetic form. He resisted systematic explanation, preferring fragmentary, elusive expression. If we check the PPT here, we see that the theme of flux and becoming, the key fragment has been in fragment B12, and the core idea had been about you cannot step into the same river twice. About the theme of fire as RK, it is found in the fragment B30, where the core idea is about cosmos is eternal fire. Similarly, about the theme logos, the key fragment is found in B1, and the core idea is about universal rational order. Going ahead again, the theme about unity of opposites, the key fragment is found in segment B10 and B88. The core idea is that opposites are interdependent. Further, about strife and harmony, it is found in B53 and B54. The core idea is about conflict creates structure, harmony is hidden. And last but not the least, about this theme of Heraclitus, he talks about the depth of the soul, and we see that it is found in key fragment B45, and the core idea is that the soul is immeasurable and deep. So Heraclitus's theory of flux is considered one of the most influential and distinctive ideas in Western philosophy. It captures his belief that the fundamental nature of realities change and that everything is in constant state of becoming rather than being static or permanent. Now, what is this theory of flux? The theory of flux refers to Heraclitus's doctrine that everything in the universe is continuously changing and nothing remains the same. He believed that change is not accidental but essential and universal. It is what reality is. The famous fragment, again, B12, is extremely important. Repeating it yet for the second time now, you cannot step into the same river twice. Because by the time you step again, both you and the river have changed. Heraclitus is asserting that everything flows, nothing stops. And Pantarei, a phrase attributed to him by later thinkers, especially Plato and the Stoics, speaks a volume of this philosophy of everything flows. Now, in the concept of becoming, we see that Heraclitus's concept of becoming is the opposite of being, where being, especially in Parmenides's philosophy, is unchanging, eternal, and fixed. Becoming is dynamic. Becoming is transformational. Becoming is in constant motion. For Heraclitus, there is no stable substance beneath change. What we perceive as identity or stability is merely a temporary balance of opposite forces. Fragment B88, the quotation, "The same thing is both living and dead, awake and asleep, young and old, for these things are changed into each other and back again," is repeated to reiterate the concept of becoming or its interplay of opposites. So with this quotation, Heraclitus tries to speak about how life and death, day and night, war and peace are not isolated states but part of a continuous transformation. Nothing is in a fixed state. It is always in the process of becoming something else. Now, examples from nature had been a favorite observation of Heraclitus, and about the river always flowing yet still called the same river. Again, about fire constantly changing, consuming and generating. Seasons, cyclical transformation in nature. These examples are not metaphors for Heraclitus. They are expressions of the deep structure of reality. About logos, the rational structure behind flux, Heraclitus talks about that while everything is in flux, Heraclitus did not believe in chaos. He proposed that all change occurs according to a universal law or reason called the logos. I'm reiterating the quotation yet again. Fragment B1. Although the logos is common, most people live as though they had a private understanding. So logos is the hidden order or a rational principle behind the universe. It explains how opposing forces create harmony, like tension in a bow or tire. Now, if we check these PPT quickly, we see that the philosopher Heraclitus, his reality is about constantly changing, becoming. The change for him is real and fundamental. The key concept is flux. Whereas later on, when we will be discussing Parmenides, we will see how for Parmenides, reality is eternal, unchanging, being. Change is illusory and key concept is being. So our focus now being with Heraclitus, we see that Heraclitus says reality is fire, which is always changing. However, Parmenides did say change is an illusion and only eternal being is real. This debate shaped all of Western metaphysics. If we talk about the concept of the theory of flux as shown in the PPT here, we see the explanation that everything is in a state of constant change. The concept of becoming for Heraclitus is that reality is not fixed. All things are in process and not in a permanent state. About opposites, Heraclitus explains that change occurs through the tension and resolution of opposites. About the concept of fire, the explanation given by Heraclitus is that it is the symbol of transformation. The world is a living fire. The logos for Heraclitus, it is the governing reason or law that ensures change follows a rational order. Now, at this point, it is important that we should also know which are the ancient sources or the primary sources where one can talk about Heraclitus or discuss about Heraclitus. The fragments, the quotations are always there, and these fragments have been preserved mainly in the works of Aristotle, his work on metaphysics and on the soul, Plato, the Stoics who adopted Heraclitus's fire as a rational element, Diogenes Laertius with his lives of the philosophers, Simplicius and Hippolytus, the later commentators. These are the primary sources or the ancient sources from where one can read about Heraclitus. Now, if we talk again about the modern scholarly books or the secondary sources, there is definitely Professor G.S. Kirk, Heraclitus, the Cosmic Fragments. Now, Kirk's work is a thorough collection and commentary on all surviving fragments. One can also go through Charles H. Cahan's The Art and Thought of Heraclitus, and in this work he has talked about the analytical and interpretative nature, placing Heraclitus within pre-Socratic thought. Going ahead, there is also Phillips Wheelwright's work on entitled as Heraclitus, which is a translation and interpretation for students and general readers. We also have Professor Jonathan Burns' work on the pre-Socratic philosophers, which is a detailed treatment of Heraclitus in the wider context of Greek philosophy. Last but not the least, there is also Guthrie's, W.K.C. Guthrie's work on a history of Greek philosophy, volume 1, and all these primary and secondary sources are equally important if one needs to understand Heraclitus. Because please remember, with Heraclitus, the concept of being a riddler has been famous, or the dark has been famous, for he had only written or he had given lessons in quotations, and if someone would want him to elaborate or to elucidate, he would scoff off, he would look down upon. So in some ways Heraclitus is known to be of haughty nature, of a nature of arrogance, and he is also known as the dark because he didn't really bother much all the time to decode or to break down his fragments. So his fragments are extremely important, and his entire genesis of his philosophy, be it the theory of becoming, the arche of fire, or the unity of opposites, or the hidden harmony, they are all palpably seen in his fragments. So for Heraclitus, everything flows, and the doctrine of flux, or the theory of becoming, they are all very well versed in his various fragments. So this is it for Heraclitus today, an introduction. We will be continuing more on Heraclitus in our upcoming lecture series. Thank you so much.